The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
What are you afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. This is episode 137, The Bothell Hell Poltergeist. We're continuing a conversation with Mr. Keith Linder, who's had some terrifying and explosive things happen to him.
I like that, explosive. That's probably the best way to describe it.
I mean, shrapnel from these things, and I can only imagine the cost to home repair. You know, just moving into this condo, it's just been crazy just trying to keep things fixed as they were. And I mean, he would install new light and it would just blow up.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure your monthly bill of lights was pretty high.
Yeah, Home Depot. This is all Home Depot. This is the Home Depot Poltergeist.
Yeah. Home Depot loved you.
Yeah, Home Depot's been installing poltergeists into people's houses and making you come out and repair the stuff constantly. But we're back on episode 137. We've been having a conversation with Mr. Linder, and it's such a fascinating story. I wanted to continue it into a part 2. So this is obviously 2 weeks later. We're on Para-X Radio, Friday nights at 9 p.m. And check out our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. And I want to let our listeners know to head over to the website, because I'll be putting up Crash Code interviews. Crash Code is an anthology out from Bloodbound Books. They published my novel Mercy. And I have a short story in Crash Code, and it's a bunch of stories about the near future, kind of a Black Mirror type anthology that they put out. And it's some incredible stories, and I've been interviewing the authors, written interviews, and I'll be putting those up on the website over time, over the next few months, and eventually we'll get a few on there. Anyway, we were back with Mr. Keith Linder, and Keith moved into a house in Washington State. He got a great job, got a great girl, his life is going great, and then strange things begin happening. He hears what sounds like a child coughing in another room. Plants in pots begin lifting up and crashing, or even thrown across the room, and he even begins to see a gray lady appear in the hall, and other unexplained phenomena. Other people begin seeing it. I remember there was a party that I was reading, and some people got freaked out there. And plus other phenomena, things go missing, and things begin appearing, obviously from other things that people have lost. And it's just such a terrifying tale. Now, you can find all that on episode 136, Hell House of Washington State. If you're listening to this episode now, go over to our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com and find episode 136 so you can kind of catch up on the story. So we've been talking to Keith. It's such a frightening, amazing, interesting tale too. And these ghost stories always move in certain patterns. It's the way they work. You have this unexplained phenomenon. You take it as far as you can go. You get on the internet. You start looking up other paranormal groups, which is always a lot of fun because there are so many out there and there are so many coming and going, and you never know if one's going to show up, if they're going to email you back, what their motives are, what they want. So you have to be careful too, and often you can find experiences from other people and references about these paranormal investigators because you're letting them into your life.
Yeah.
And you have to be really careful because everybody does have an agenda, whether it's positive, whether it's to write a book, whether it's to get your own show on television. Everyone's got an agenda, especially with how paranormal television and books are taking off so much. So, Keith, how are you today, by the way, sir?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to be back.
Thanks for coming back to the show. So, you have all these crazy things going on, and you decide it's time to bring in some people who've had more experience because you weren't really prepared for this kind of thing. Like, you were just a normal guy trying to create a life, moved out Washington State to create a life, and all of a sudden you have pots lifting up and light fixtures exploding and huge pieces of furniture being thrown across the room. And naturally, eventually you go to the internet and you find some paranormal investigators to come and help you. What were your experiences like with them?
Very difficult. Early on, I discovered not all paranormal teams are created equal. Mm-hmm. You said it right in the sense of there's different agendas. People walk in your front door with different worldviews. They're really more interested in confirming their theory than getting to the truth, which means some of the evidence, some of the phenomena that took place that they witnessed, they don't call attention to, they don't focus on. I had one team come in who did a cleansing and really, and they said this to me and Tina to our face. We're going to call all the spirits in the house into us. They're going to go into our bodies and we're going to walk them out of your house, and you're never going to have any problems again. And I kid you not, as they're leaving the house, sort of trying to play like they're holding spirits within their body, but doing a bad impression of it. But you hear the loud stomping and the loud banging coming from upstairs, and me and Tina would just point up to, and with our face say, "You left one, you're still here." And they're like, those are just the good guys. Those are just the good guys who are still here. They're going to protect you. Goodbye. And
oh, man. No, I think they were just telling you that so they could get out. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, they were just getting out of there. Yeah. And believe it or not, a lot of them were in over their heads. A lot of them mimic what they see on TV. They're just mimicking. Right. And when they get to the end of their skill tree and the clipboard of what to do, then you're right. Then it's like, okay, we got to go. We're your house. We weren't expecting to come to a real haunted house. We just was coming to chase your raccoons out the attic.
Yeah. I don't think they were expecting what they encountered.
Yeah, you got
some. That was just a nice way to exit gracefully.
Yeah. And they exit, but the problem's unsolved, and it's true, especially with our situation. Our spirits made us pay a price for that. You guys are calling help, or you guys called 911. Okay, all right. Well, tonight, good luck sleeping. Or the times when me and Tina will sometimes leave to go stay at a hotel because the activity got so bad. Keys went missing, car wouldn't start. Drained battery, stuff like that. And then on the flip side, there were some teams who really did try to go at it from a problem-solving point of view, who were just not there for the thrill of it, but would overly admit when they got to the point of, hey, we don't know how to solve this problem for you, and we'll try to reach out to people that we may or may not know, but we're in this together. So yeah, I would say it was very 50-50, and including the church. The church, like I said, everybody, I guess it's human to have a worldview, but the church comes in with their worldview. So they come in, heavy hitting. They're coming in trying to remove Satan off the foundation of the earth. So they're coming in no holds barred mentality. Yeah, it just ratchets it up the activity. There are times where the activity will quell or be quiet for a few days, but it will ratchet up again. I call those flare-ups, and then the campaign starts all over. Yeah, it was very frustrating for me and Tina because we could not get consistency You ask 5 paranormal teams what they think it is, you get 20 different answers, and so there's no community, there's no alignment, if you will.
Yeah, there's no college, there's no parapsychology course, there's no National Society of Parapsychologists and Paranormal Setting guidelines. These are a lot of these people are just people who buy the stuff from websites, they watch television shows, and then they start developing their own mythology. They find a lot of psychics who come in, and you always hear the same thing. A psychic will come in, and well, there are 6 ghosts here. They were murdered by a child molester, and they were, and it's this mythology. It's the story they create. A lot of people buy it. They do. And then they get tangled in their own stories, and things just get overcomplicated, and pretty soon you've got a paranormal investigator scaring people out of their homes, creating terrible financial hardships. It's just such a dark side of the industry.
Even worse than that, and we had this happen a few times, or they suggest, well, you're the reason for the phenomena.
Right.
You're mental, and they did this to Tina a lot more than me. It's you. You're and I don't mind that if you can prove that, but we've already established that the house was having activity 5 years before we moved in by talking to the previous tenants. And they're just shooting from the hip of what they read about, the whole adolescent, teenager, puberty, da-da-da-da-da. And yeah, so they make a blanket statement like that, and then they don't prove it or back it up, but they're just shooting off the hip intellectually. And that really upset me and Tina, because like I said, who wants to be told you're the reason Bibles are catching fire?
Yeah, you don't want to hear. No one wants to hear.
No, I've never experienced this before in my life, and you've not figured out what. We didn't play with any Ouija boards. Me and Tina were not into paranormal. We didn't walk in the house opening up Ouija boards. We didn't sing, Bloody Mary in front of the mirror. We just worked a 9 to 5 and came home to watch TV and go to bed.
Right.
There was something here when we moved in that found us interesting to play with. So to hear them say that, to go to that extreme, with data to back it up, was just really frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, it was just, I think they didn't really understand. They just needed to say something, throw something out, that they didn't understand. So
and then go back to their job at Walmart's. Basically,
right,
they don't have any.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wish I could blame my spirits for burning cakes, burning scones, burning muffins. That would get me out a lot of trouble. Oh, I didn't burn this. I didn't put it on too high. The spirits burned the cupcakes, Mom. So.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
We'll be right back with Keith Linder.
What are you afraid of?
Hi, I'm Tim Wagner, Bram Stoker award-winning author.
# Grave Girls.
This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown.
This is Jim Chambers. I'm the author of The Engines of Sacrifice.
This is Jasper Barr, award-winning author of The Final Cut.
And you're listening to What Are You Afraid of?
What Are You Afraid of?
To What Are You Afraid of?
What are you afraid of?
Love it. Fantoxic, please. Fantoxic.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head, the sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered lyrical supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
We're back on episode 137.
We are back.
Talking with the great Keith Linder. This is a two-part episode. We've been talking to Keith, and it's just been most enjoyable.
These paranormal investigators that came in, like, you know, they're obviously amateur ones, and, you know, but you did have some dealings with some pretty big guns, you know, Ghost Adventures. They came to film an episode in your house, and they came for a few hours one night, and the spirits were apparently feeling a bit shy. So my question is, how did you deal with their lack of findings and the apparent backlash from the paranormal fan community? How did you respond to that?
I was surprised by the backlash of the paranormal community when the episode aired of Ghost Adventures not finding any evidence of me and Tina's home. I was really surprised. I was caught off guard only because when Ghost Adventures arrived to our home, they arrived and only spent 5 hours investigating.
Okay.
They knew, because we told them 2 months before they arrived, but you know, the audience didn't know this, but Ghost Adventures knew this, that we did not have activity for a whole year of 2013.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We've had other paranormal teams come in who spend longer hours or lesser hours and don't get any evidence. And they should have put a disclaimer on the show saying, hey, we were there a relatively short period of time. Poltergeist cases are almost hard and difficult to investigate. There's so many variables going into it at play. We're not saying that anything is there. We're just saying we didn't get anything for the short period of time that we were there. Of course, they're never going to say that, but it would have been good if they did. That would have at least kept the, for lack of a better word, the trolls at bay. Because I'm a firm believer when I call you, and this goes across multiple professions, not just the paranormal. If I call you into my home to help me, right, the number one goal that you should have is I don't want to make the situation worse than it already is for you and Tina, for your lives or whatever. I don't want you guys being beat up on the internet. I don't want Tina being called the demon lady. You called the liar. Now, if you find hoaxing, if you find tripwire or, cords or whatever, kerosene in the basement and gallons and gallons of paint and whatnot and a stack of Bibles.
Right.
and you can expose that and we deserve what we get. But you did not find none of that. And then the leap is, Ghost Adventures didn't find anything. That must mean it's fake. That's a huge leap. It does not mean that it's fake. It just means exactly what you said.
Right, and that's just untrue. And that's just untrue. You know, just because you said you were only there 5 hours, so you know, like you said, there was a long period of time without any activity. So the chances of them getting activity during that 5 hours is slim anyway. So and you can't have them there all the time for like days and weeks on end waiting for something to happen. And when it does, obviously it's going to, because you've been dealing with it a long time. But it's impossible to have them there that long. So yeah. I think the paranormal community needs to look at that,
Yeah.
And understand, just because, they came out for, it's a TV show, they came out for 5 hours, doesn't mean they're going to catch something in that specific amount of time.
Yeah, I was surprised when they sent me the itinerary before they arrived. Me and Tina even had this conversation. I was like, because they sent us an itinerary of the B-roll team and the A team. The B-roll team is there for 3 days doing reenactments, refilming, and all that stuff. The A team, which is Zach and his crew, and it says clearly in PDF, black and white, we're only there for 5 hours. And I was like, wow, either these guys are very, very, very good, or they're going to get zilch.
Yeah.
I mean, because 5 hours, they were there by, they started the investigation by 11 p.m. They were out by 3 a.m. And I'm not an investigator. I know I couldn't get anything, and I live here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's and when did the episode air? When was this?
This is February 28, 2015.
Okay. Well,
Again, they have their agendas. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone has something they're trying to gain from the situation. And hopefully those goals can align. When I talked about the story, and I was talking about Mr. Linder, and I think he's been a great gentleman, and I read his books, and I found no reason to doubt. Of course, I had some naysayers, and I was basically thinking, I have not encountered one paranormal ghost story, one book, one incident that it didn't have naysayers, that didn't have critics and skeptics, and it's just a lot of the television shows, when they come in, they can do a lot of damage. One of the some of the guests we've been speaking to were very, very cautious about talking to us because they had been on shows on television on various channels. Their stories had been distorted, or they didn't know what was going to be filmed, and then they were talking about the experience, and they had no idea how their stories were going to be extrapolated so that you think that what's on television is what they're saying is happened. And then there's a lot of blowback from people who say, well, you never said that happened, or you're lying, or there's no facts to support it. And they're very, very scared to talk to us because they don't want to get hurt anymore. They don't want to be called skeptics. They don't, because television has an agenda, and that's to entertain people. They're not interested in proving the existence of ghosts. They want ratings.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And you take a couple or a family who's been inundated constantly. Me and Tina knew nothing about the paranormal. We knew nothing about ghost adventures until they came calling. They found us. And you hear like, okay, they're going to have a lot of resources attached to them because they belong to the Travel Channel. Therefore, must have a lot of resources at their disposal, meaning the world over, and they can bring all that to the Bothell House and knock this out the park. That's what me and Tina's logic led us. Totally opposite is what happened, but you don't find out until they get there. And then when they left, they left around, I think they were here December of 2014. No communication for the 2.5 months until the episode aired. When the world saw the episode of Ghost Adventures not finding anything, that's what me and Tina found out about it. There was no precursor. There was no anything or whatsoever. Hey, you guys might want to brace yourselves for the world's reaction. None of that. It was like we became enemies. It is weird to be, invite you into my home, show you where the bathroom is, make you a cup of coffee, and you're not picking up one tweet to say, hey, leave Keith and Tina alone. But it was just an overall experience. And then talking to other poltergeist or haunted house survivors who've had similar interactions with other paranormal things, not just ghost adventures, the reaction or the experience is always similar. You're right. Their agenda and the house occupants' agenda are polar opposite.
I want to remind our listeners that Phil and I. Oh, there's Fox. It's Phil and I.
Fox and I.
We're authors. We're parajournalists. We're not paranormal investigators. I want to remind our listeners and our faithful audience that Phil and I, we're authors. I know Phil's done a couple of paranormal investigations, but we're not paranormal investigators. We're parajournalists. We listen to the stories. We tell the stories. And so we're less concerned with finding evidence. We just want to give a good story to our listeners. And we're not here to prove or disprove or... You get the idea. Yeah.
Absolutely. We report the story, and then it's up to the audience to decide for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're here for the story. And the views of our guests don't reflect the views of Para X or any of the people we work with. And we're just here to tell our stories in a reasonable way. But we're going to pause now to play another piece that Keith Linder had done. This is the 5th year anniversary. It was read by our wonderful English folk singer, David Walton. And we will be right back with Keith on episode
137.
Episode 137, The Bothell Poltergeist, on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Parax Radio Friday nights at 9 p.m. And check out our website at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com for a page about this episode with links, pictures, just the whole 9 yards, where you can find out more information about this story, and plus our archive of ghost stories, some fiction, and the interviews from Crash Code, which I'm very excited to be putting up. Crash Code is an incredible anthology that's coming on. We'll be right back on episode 137. This is 5th year anniversary from Keith Linder, read by David Walton.
Fifth anniversary of the Poltergeist attack. From the Bothell Hell House, Poltergeist of Washington State. Experienced and written by Keith Linder and read by David Walton. November 1st, 2014, after midnight, Tina and I came home to discover our home has once again been ransacked by the poltergeist currently infesting our home. Kitchen cabinet doors were all left open. The kitchen chairs had been reassembled, some aligned into a triangle-like position. The kitchen chair I sit in the most was pulled out and inexplicably facing the living room TV. This is the 3rd or 4th time that has happened, with the exception of water puddles, see below, and maybe the bar stool, the one I sit in the most, which was one of the first things I saw upon entering my home. It was now sitting on top of the kitchen island countertop, 3 to 4 feet off the ground. Nothing else was horrible shocking. Tina and I had needed a break from the previous night attacks, therefore we decided not to be home Halloween night. Too much had happened the previous nights. Imagine coming home and finding all your kitchen cabinet doors open, the contents of the cupboards emptied at times, wine rack emptied, all the bottles scattered or neatly aligned on the kitchen floor. More shocking? Imagine coming home, multiple times mind you, over a period of 8 months, and finding both couch and love seat turned upside down, sometimes partially, most of the times completely upside down. The security system you had installed months prior to rule out burglar or home invasion hasn't been tripped or altered in any way. The log the system keeps, stored on the internet mind you, shows the last person to enter and leave the home was you, hours prior. The cameras show the same thing. The story gets worse. After surveying the melee and destruction downstairs, I decided to head upstairs. The jury will forever be out on which portion of our home was attacked the most, upstairs or downstairs. My office, however, 4th bedroom in the house, holds the record as being the most dangerous room in the house. Tonight would be no exception. I stepped into my office and saw what I've been seeing for quite some time: utter destruction. Identical to the destruction downstairs, with the only exception being inexplicable wall writings. I was advised by the local Catholic Church and other houses of God to paint over the wall markings as soon as they appeared. Today's wall markings were different. A new substance was used. I found out 2 years later, because I had the substance tested myself, that this black oily substance was bone black, aka bone char, aka bone ash, not easily or readily available in any paint store in the world. Like I said, that revelation came 2 years later. Majority of poltergeist cases speak of what I just described, i.e. the destruction of the home happening while the home occupants are present. Tina and I have experienced both. We've seen hell erupt right before our eyes. The majority of the time, and this is important to the researcher reading this, the destruction has happened while we're away. Tonight is a perfect example of that. There are 4 things I remember about this particular night, morning, more than anything else. Number 1, the water puddles on the floor. This is new. The droplets of water, numerous and sizable, were found on the wooden floor in the kitchen, between wine rack and kitchen table, very close to the kitchen chair I sit in, which once again had been pulled out and turned towards the TV. Number 2, a wine book resting on the kitchen table. This book wasn't ours. Number 3, and this is very shocking and unnerving to me. It relates to number 4, so here goes. I make a point to document everything that happens in our house. I keep a written diary and a video diary. After video recording all the damage and inexplicable destruction done, I was exhausted. My exhaustion, I have no doubt, is what led to my error in judgment. The first thing I do after I record something is back up everything to the cloud. Videos get uploaded to YouTube. I decided to go to bed, sleep on the couch, instead of backing everything up. I put my video camera a few inches away from me and was out like a light. When I woke up a few hours later, I realized immediately after waking up that my video camera was gone. It's still missing to this day. The video you're about to see came from my cell phone. It's a shorter version of everything I just described. The video camera I used the first time. The one that's still missing has over 30 minutes of video footage. I told Tina this before. Now I'm telling you. When I walked through my front door that night, I felt like I was interrupting something. A huge feeling of being watched took over. Everything I just mentioned and described, my gut, tells me happened within minutes of us coming home. What do I base that on besides intuition? All the wall markings up until now have happened in one room and one room only. My office. Not anymore. Tina and I found a black oily substance identical to the substance in my office. We found this substance in the upstairs hallway near the bookshelf. The squiggly and squirrely black marks are identical except for one huge exception. They're partially done. They appear incomplete. It's as if something or someone interrupted that portion of wall writing from being completed. That someone was Keith and Tina.
Demons, vampires, werewolves, skinwalkers, all of this and more. Sunday nights at midnight on the Staring Into the Abyss radio show. Come, get lost with us.
Oh. UFOs. Bigfoot. Cryptids.
All this is on the call. You think it's you listening to the words of Paranormal X.
I've seen it all to go.
Death Moon by Pueblo People. What are you afraid of? We're back on episode 137. But we are back on episode 137, The Bothell Poltergeist, and it's been quite a compelling story, and we've been talking to Mr. Keith Linder, has been with us, kind enough to take this Saturday afternoon, a very cold Saturday afternoon here in Lancaster. The books were phenomenal, and you can find more information about Mr. Linder up at the website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com, where you can find a page for every episode, plus our archive of ghost stories, plus articles. Keith, in your book, one of the things that I really loved about it was that you try to explain things logically with some science. You quote Stephen Hawking, from his book.
A Brief History of Time? Is that?
What do you think was causing this phenomenon? Was it inhuman spirits? Was it an angry energy? Was it a psychic tornado? Was it quantum estrangement? Or was it even the dead?
Almost all the above. When we finally got down, and it was a journey to get there, and we relatively got there recently, of determining, the root cause of the activity. I come from a space of the IT space. I've been in the IT space for a while. And we look at things and from a problem-solving point of view. I was in the problem-solving field of IT for 20 years. And you basically start with the basics of looking at, the cause and effect. What could be causing these phenomena? Let's first find out when the first phenomena occurred, which we did find out. It was the previous tenants in 2008. Okay, well, who were they? What were they? What were they doing? What was their life like mentally? So you go down that road, and with me using Stephen Hawking's his book, A Brief History of Time, I was a big fan of it. I was not a fan of quantum physics or physics in general, but the way Stephen explained it in layman's terms to where it was really easy to read, it wasn't difficult. He didn't throw equations on every page. So I looked at the things that was happening in our house, and believe it or not, they defy the laws of physics. So I was saying, okay, maybe we can find the root cause of this. We know now that some of the activity is related to the land. I believe you were saying something earlier about Native Americans or something to that effect about your property.
Yes.
We know that about Bothell now. And the spirits, meaning the poltergeists, were the ones that are giving all the clues. The wall writings, the black oily stuff on the wall, I had that analyzed. It came back as bone black, aka bone char.
Oh my.
Individuals can Google both words, bone black, bone char, and see that is incinerated buffalo or bison bone, organic. And the spirits use that to write on the walls. Also, if you've seen the wall markings, you see the upside down man or the upside down stick figure. We researched that to learn that that's a calligraphy pictogram that Native Americans draw of their deceased. It means a man has died either through smallpox or some other type of disease or was murdered. Also, it means a man is about to die. We did learn that in the city of Bothell, where my house is, that over 500 Native Americans perished in several winters due to smallpox and are buried, scattered throughout Puget Sound, throughout Bothell. So we know that. Going back to the Gray Lady, I think I said this in the book. After I saw her 2 or 3 more times, I recognized her face. The Gray Lady looks just like Rhonda. Rhonda is the wife, the mother, who lived in the home in 2008, who was alive at the time, is not alive now, but was alive at the time of when I saw the Gray Lady and the White Lady, spitting images of her, which cracks up in another book of what is called a living or crisis apparition. Because Rhonda did have turmoil mentally and physically in the home. Her son saw shadowy figures out the corner of his eye, same as me. So all these different variables coming at me left and right as to why this house, out of the 80 plus homes in the neighborhood, it has elements of poltergeist. There are elements of residual haunting, going back to some of the apparitions that look like you're just watching a movie because they're not interacting with you at all. They're just going left and right, like they're playing out something. And then there are the apparitions that do interact with you. So it was just a whole conundrum of different evidence and puzzles. But the gist of it, meaning almost all of it, I would say 90% of it fits under the poltergeist umbrella. And just to be full disclosure, we still, meaning the industry or the field, we still don't 100% know what poltergeist is or what causes it. You know, every case is different, mine included. But with new evidence being introduced, you can revise existing theories or put away outdated theories. And I'm hoping that's the takeaway for my case as to some of the things we think poltergeists are or is might not be the case.
To remind our audience, when Allison and I moved here, we were so lucky to find this location in Lancaster because she had gotten the job, and then a few weeks later, and in fact, we were going to have an interview in November with Mr. Linder, and then A, I had some medical issues pop up, and B, all of a sudden, we had to move to Lancaster in 6 weeks, so it got a little crazy. We had to postpone things. But, and then later I found out as I was researching ghost stories of Lancaster, which is, of course, Amish country and the Pennsylvania Dutch, I discovered that there was a Native American massacre of the Conestoga. We talked about that in the previous episode, and we are on the actual location where they buried the bodies from this terrible massacre, and the bodies were mostly moved, but some were still down there. And I'm telling you, if tomorrow I wake up and there's a bone black image on the wall, I'm just son of a,
Yeah.
I'm so afraid these things are going to start happening here because we love the apartment. I mean, the apartment was built in the medieval era, but we still love it here. I wish we had more hot water, but I'm so afraid things are going to start happening, and we're going to have to leave.
What you were just explaining, have you had anything happen since we last spoke about it?
It's always coming back from the laundry room across the parking lot.
Right.
And when you come back, I swear this one time, I saw the figure coming down the stairs from the corner of my eye again. And I thought it was someone coming down to use the washing machine. And it's in a very dark, scary basement over on the property. And this time, as I was coming back, I kept looking behind me because I really felt like somebody was walking behind me. I could hear the footsteps. I thought it was another tenant. I thought perhaps it was our very nice neighbor. And it freaked me out until I got to the door, and then it stopped. And besides that, the nightmares so far, hopefully it's just my own anxiety.
Yeah, well, it looks like Keith is giving you a potential crash course here.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully not, but hopefully you won't ever have to use it. But it's still good knowledge. It's good knowledge either way. But for Keith, looking back to the start of your supernatural experiences, what do you now know that you wish you knew then, and what advice would you give others going through this? Speaking of which.
Hindsight being 2020. If I knew that day when me and Tina moved into the home that the kid cough was a precursor to all the activity we talked about tonight, I definitely would have not introduced the infrared cameras that I bought off Best Buy and other places because I learned that the more attention we gave, me specifically, I played a role indirectly in some of the activity just totally getting out of control. I would not have moved out of the house. I would not have smudged religiously like I was advised to smudge or sage. And I've been told, poltergeists are interesting. They unwillingly get you to do some of their own bidding by focusing on them. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself chasing your tail, the cat chasing his tail,
right,
trying to find them and catch them. You're not going to catch them. Right. But so I would do that different. My advice to people, and I get emails from people who find me on the internet, and they ask me, what advice can I give them? The first thing I tell them is understand every home is different, every family is different, every person is different. You have to know when the going gets tough or when it's time to get out. Only you, that person. I can't tell you to stay. I can't tell you to leave. It's really an individual decision. Obviously, you're at ground zero. I'm not. If things feel dangerous and hectic to you and you have an exit strategy, you might want to do that. You might want to cut your losses now. I also tell people to be mindful and due diligence of the teams that you bring in. Ask them important questions. Try to dig down as to what their real motive was. If they don't listen to what you're telling them, then you don't need them in your home. You cannot have a paranormal team who doesn't listen to what you tell them, just like you can't have a doctor or physician who doesn't listen to your aches and pains. They just want to give you prescriptions.
Absolutely.
And that's what most paranormal teams want to do. They want to come in, not listen to you, and tell you what you got in the home. You live there, you know it better than anybody what you got in the home. You might not have a name for it, but you know what you got in the home, and make nobody try to steal your common sense from you. You saw a cabinet drawer fly across the room. Don't let a paranormal team talk you out of that, because some of them will.
Yeah, right. That's good advice. That's very good advice.
Don't ever let them talk you out of your common sense. I like that very much. Talking to a good friend of ours, Bill, you know Bill, of course, I was asking him as we were having the conversation, we were talking about quantum physics and quantum estrangement, Stephen Hawking, and I asked him if he had any questions or comments, and now he was saying something interesting, and this isn't a blame thing or anything, but, you know, like we caused it or anything, but he was saying newer interpretations of quantum theory state that we can either modify or create reality as we go. And it almost goes back to the idea of where some poltergeists may have been the result of, and this was the earlier theory, like Hans Holzer and stuff, where younger people, especially going through puberty, had an uncontrolled psychic energy that they could contribute to hauntings. I'm not saying it's the cause of hauntings, but I'm saying somehow these energies form a matrices that we sort of contribute to and contribute back to us. And like Keith was saying, where the spirits are almost getting him to do their bidding through a series of cause and effects, you know, like sort of prompting him to do things because they would do something and then they knew he'd react a certain way and then he'd do it and almost sort of contribute, you know, not willingly. I'm not saying it was their cause or, you know, the whole thing where they were blaming him. I hate that because I keep hearing that, people getting blamed for their own pain and fear and basically, you know, saying, well, we can't fix this like we told you we could because it's your fault and you're the cause and we're not the problem and we're out of here. I can't stand that, the self-serving when people do that. But it's just interesting. And by the way, Bill's doing very well. I hear he's starting a shiny penny coin collection.
Oh, nice.
It's just a comment. But Keith, it's been very cool talking to you. And this has been one of the better episodes that I think of the show. Just phenomenal ghost stories, phenomenal perception. And it just sounds like you're out there with a new campaign to spread the word, to help people to understand it. And just, I mean, you had these extraordinary things happen to you. And you want to tell the world. And just perhaps the world isn't ready to listen to it in their philosophies. But thank you so much for being on the show. And as we're closing episode 137, the Bothell Poltergeist, I want to ask you one more question, and that's, I know you're out of the house. It sounds like you've moved on with your life. Sadly, others didn't move on with you, and it's a shame that happened, and probably part of the stress that was happening. I mean, you're having your house explode around you all the time. I know we would find that very stressful here.
Yeah.
So are there any things that happened to you back at the house that still frighten you, that still terrify you? Was there one or two things that happened to you that still make your heart race or keep you up at night?
I tell you, the poster, when the poster caught fire, whatever ran past me, or that force of energy I felt run past me, thundering down the stairs. It was running from the room that was on fire, my poster, and we met in the hallway. I was stepping out of my master bedroom. We missed each other relatively close because you feel it. You felt a presence. It felt evil. It was dark. It was dark. The front door opened and slammed. There was nobody there. And then there's that fire. The second to that, or a close first place to that, would be the heartbeats in the bed. When you go to sleep and you hear very rapid heartbeats in your pillowcase or mattress, wherever your ears are laying on at the time. And that can be nonstop for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes. That campaign began in the Bothell house, and it's still happening today. So it's like a reminder, if you will. Several teams out of the UK, Steve Meredith, Phillips, and others, did capture that phenomena. I put it in book to the heartbeat so individuals can listen to those heartbeats themselves. I bought expensive digital stethoscopes and was able to capture the heartbeats off my bed and pillow. So those videos are on my YouTube channel. But those two things, because you're right, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was that ran past me, and I don't know what's giving those heartbeats.
Wow.
Well, we'll put that video up at the website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. We'll
I was
the
just
link
saying,
over.
I want to watch that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, we'll put that up on the video on the website.
Okay.
But Keith, it's been incredible talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to be on What Are You Afraid Of? On our last two episodes, our two-parter, 136, 137. And you can find those episodes at our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. We're on Parax Radio at 9 p.m., where you can also find links to Keith's books, his videos, and his ongoing crusade to tell people what happened and to let them know that the universe is a lot bigger than we think of. You know, that there are more things in heaven and earth than dreamed of in your philosophy, Horatio. But Keith, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was a good back and forth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. We really appreciate you being here.
It's awesome.
But this is What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show. We are back for 2020. We've got some incredible things coming up. Horror authors, ghost stories, just some wonderful people that I've met to tell their story here on the show. And you can find us again on Parax Radio at 9 p.m. and our website Friday nights on our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. We will see you next spooky time. This is T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm Phil Thomas.
Yeah, I wish I could blame my spirits for burning cakes, burning scones. T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A television series based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the Stargate anthology Points of Origin from MGM and Fandemonium Books. Fox is an active member of the Horror Writers Association, and he's had published hundreds of short stories and articles. His motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time. Find out more information at www.tfoxdunham.com.
Phil Thomas is an author and screenwriter from the suburbs of Philadelphia. His screenplays have been produced into 2 feature films, False Face and Always from Darkness, and are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon Prime on demand. His screenplay, 3 Tunnels, was a semi-finalist at the LA Screenplay Competition. He is a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, and he currently writes for Cultured Vultures, Game Skinny, and BloodyDisgusting.com. He formerly held the position of Senior Marketing Manager at Eternal Press, and was a journalist for Patch, where he wrote a daily tech column covering the latest electronics and gadgets. He lives in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and is currently working on his second novel, Worst Afterlife Ever.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.